welcome back to Study With Additti. My name is Additti and this channel is dedicated to revision tips and tricks, along with much more, to make your schooling life a whole lot easier. And today I'll be talking about how to revise religious studies, also known as RS and RE, religious education in some schools. If you don't already know, this video is part of a series called the How to Revise a Certain Subject series. I'll be doing videos on as many subjects as possible, including the ones that I'm doing and including other ones. So if you have any requests for any subject, please comment it down below and I'll see what I can do. Anyway, back to RS. So I currently don't do RS at the moment for A-level, but I did do it at GCSE and I did it with the new spec, so the 9:1 spec. So I'm just going to tell you a bit about my experience of that and how it went really, how I revised, what I did, how I structured questions, things like that. So let's get started. As usual, I have some notes. So again, if I look down at any point, that is why. I was with the AQA board and for paper 1 I did Islam and Christianity, and for paper 2 I did theme A, relationships and families, theme B, religion and life, theme E, which was religion, crime and punishment, and also theme F, I think it was religion, human rights and social justice. So firstly I'm going to cover how I actually learnt the content. As I did for science, I made flashcards. By the way, I'll link my how to revise science video in the little I above. So here they are. These are basically got the same structure as my science flashcards. They've got the topic and subtopic numbers at the top. So again, I did the underlining and boxing in orange and pink, just because I think those are the two colours I had. A lot of the time, the key words were underlined in orange or boxed in orange, and then I boxed all the quotes in pink, just so my mind could associate that these were all quotes and like kind of just bunch them together. Also, make sure you do have quotes on your flashcards because as I'll mention later in this video, you will need quotes for your answers. If you are going to make these flashcards and be determined to actually learn from them, make them quite early on, because it's very hard to learn lots of similar quotes and like try to cram that all in. The content, okay, you can kind of learn, oh yeah, Muslims believe this, Christians believe this, but the quotes are hard to learn if you're trying to cram it. If you do it over a long period of time, I'd say that's a lot easier. One thing I didn't mention in my how to revise science video was I always do the header in capitals, just so that it's really standing out there and it doesn't get mixed up with the rest of the content. But yeah, these flashcards are really quite similar to my how to revise science flashcards. Now we can move on to actually answering the questions. So I'm going to just cover the general structure of the questions and how you should approach them. Firstly, a 1 marker. A 1 marker is going to be multiple choice. So all you have to do is write the correct letter. So next you have a 2 marker. So this is 2 points with no explanation. I've been reading examiners' reports for RS and they said don't write that much. If you're writing loads and loads for a 2 marker, then you're really not going to be able to write enough for the 12 marker. And considering you have 4 12 markers in one paper, you've kind of got to limit yourself on how much you can write. Remember a mark per minute, so 1 mark, 1 minute, 2 marks, 2 minutes, etc. Next is a 4 marker. So this is again 2 points, but this time you've got to develop it. However, don't overdevelop it because 1, you're going to lose time, and 2, the examiner's not going to be bothered to read that much anyway. The next one is a 5 marker. So this is again 2 points with the same amount of development as the previous question, the 4 marker, but this time you've got to add a quote or a teaching, just reference to scripture in some sort of way. So this can be direct or indirect. So a direct quote would be love thy neighbour, and the indirect quote of that would be Christianity teaches us to care for the people around us, you know, that sort of thing. So it can be either one of those. Just make sure it isn't a random quote. You have to actually link it to one of your points and make sure that it really does link. A lot of people from my year use the quote love thy neighbour And even in the examiner's reports, it's been saying like so many people used it inappropriately, out of context, and they lost marks for that. It is quite universal, but once it gets like out of context, it really doesn't work. So now we move on to the big one, the 12 marker. Okay, so my teacher actually told me that you needed an introduction, and in that intro you would put like, you would define the key terms, kind of introduce the argument, and also subtly state your own viewpoint. However, in an AQA document that I've just read, they said that you don't need an introduction. So, I mean, if you want, you can still do an introduction, but it is, at the end of the day, kind of pointless. If it helps you get into the question, then that's okay, but only keep it like 3 lines long. There's absolutely no point in doing an introduction longer than that, even if it helps you get into the flow of the question, because they're not going to read it and it's just going to be a waste of time. The structure I followed for a lot of my 12 markers as homework or classwork or in an exam was a 3-line introduction, and then 2 points for, then I'd have 2 against, and then I'd have a conclusion. The arguments for I'd kind of put into one big paragraph, but I made sure there were separate points, and then I did the same for the against points as well. In the conclusion, I gave other viewpoints that weren't the ones that I'd already given. So like, say I'd done Islam and Christianity, I'd bring in like Hinduism or Buddhism or something like that, something a bit different. But you don't want to make that really long because it is your conclusion, you're trying to wrap it up, so you don't want to stretch it out further. And then at the very end, I'd come to a viewpoint of my own and I'd kind of explain why. So I'd used to use the phrase, as a Hindu, I believe. That would make sure I got my Hinduism argument in there as well, so other viewpoints in the conclusion. And this structure actually got me 12 out of 12 for quite a lot of the 12 markers I did. That was what I did, but now I'm just going to read you what AQA have said themselves. So they expect you in 12 minutes to write approximately 250 words. More than that is a bit pointless, but less than that is risky. So make sure you've got that much. Make sure that when you're doing classwork and homework, try and write your 12 markers in 12 minutes and also with 250 words. Firstly, it's going to help you with your exam timing, and secondly, it's going to help you really get your argument concise and to the point. So I'm just going to read you out the mark scheme for 12 mark questions. So there's 4 levels, and level 4 is the best. That's not to be confused with grades. Grades are different. A level is kind of within a question. They also have these for geography. By the way, if you want to see my how to revise geography video, that will also be linked in the eye. So the criteria for this is a well-argued response with reasoned consideration of different points of view. Logical chains of reasoning leading to judgments supported by knowledge and understanding of relevant evidence and information. References to religion applied to the issue. So that's really what you want to be doing. That's where the highest marks are going to be. And honestly, if you score level 4 for all of your 12 markers, you're going to do really well. A lot of people actually decide to do their 12 markers first because that's where like the marks really are. Compared to a 1 marker, you literally have 12 times the amount of marks. So like by doing the 12 markers first, you kind of ensure to yourself that you've already done the biggest mark questions. That way, if you did run out of time, then it wouldn't matter as much because you only have like the 2 mark questions and the 1 mark questions left. But other people decide to go in the order of the questions because it builds their flow up, and that way they feel like they can give a better 12 mark response because they've kind of got into the exam, they know what they're doing, going at a good pace, that sort of thing. But I mean, it's up to you. There are pros and cons for each method. Examiners have also said refer to the bullet points that are given in the question because those are there for a reason. They're meant to help you. They're meant to actually give you some marks. So really try and think about those bullet points and don't ignore them, basically. Another big thing that they've said is that the students with the best answers have understood the assessment objectives. Those are those AOs, so like AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4. If you try and learn those and make sure your answers are always crafted towards those objectives, that way you're going to maximize the amount of marks that you get, because the examiners are looking for that, and if you just give them that, it's like a match made in heaven, basically. If the question says contrasting, make sure that the points you give are contrasting. If the question says similar, make sure the points that you give are similar. You get it. Just keep looking back at the question, see what it says, make sure you're on the right track. There you go. For paper 2, examiners had said that the best answers actually refer to specific religions rather than saying religious believers. I'm a Hindu, I'm a religious believer, but my beliefs are very different to those of a Christian who is also a religious believer. So that vague term isn't really going to do you any good. If the question says name, you can actually just bullet point your answers. You don't even have to write a full sentence. So say if the question was, name the 2 types of Muslim, you could just literally be like Sunni, Shia. No other words involved, no sentences, literally just say that. Make sure you do it in the right places, because where they want sentences, you can't be putting single words, because that's just going to lower your marks. This is just about saving time. So you've just got to know what to do when for each question, and that's really it. As long as you know the content, it's going to be fine. For RS, make sure you do practice questions. Try and get some from your teachers, from your RS department, anything like that. Your CGP should also have some in a workbook or in the revision and practice books. They're usually quite good. But yeah, it's mainly the 12 markers that you've got to practice, and once you've done them, really you're all good to go. So yeah, I don't really have any more to say on RS. If you're doing A-level RS, please share your tips and tricks in the comments below. Even if you have any revision tips and tricks for GCSE as well, please share them. I'd really just like the comments to be a place where everyone can go and just get some advice on each subject. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. Once you've subscribed, hit the bell icon so you can be here early for all my videos and get notified every time I post. Also, please smash the like button, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!